Not here. Not here. Please, God, not here, not here. When I bought my ticket to Absolution Fest in early 2023, something seemed to be happening in music, more specifically, live music. I noticed early in 2023 that a bunch of Gen X bands, big names, were showing up in big ways. I started to wonder, is there a closed door meeting that's happening? Is everyone deciding to mobilize at once? And if so, what would they do that for, aside from getting us out of our homes following a pandemic? Especially when we can't really say it was following a pandemic. It all still feels like the pandemic. And yet at that time, they needed us out of our homes. And so while I don't want to say that there was a closed-door meeting where Robert Smith, Martin Gore, Shirley Manson, among others, got together to talk about how to get people out of their homes, and they decided that this would, of course, be the bands that Gen X was dying to see, because it had reached time for our nostalgia. So not only did Gen X have a little bit extra money than some of the younger generations because we're older, we're also still young enough to get out to the shows and to see the bands. And so I'm not saying that it was a concerted effort. I'm just saying if it was a concerted effort, it worked. This was around the time that I bought my ticket to Absolution Fest 2023, having no idea that this festival was going to mean a lot more, that there would be something that I would be working through that I thought at that time was well in my past. Guess what? It wasn't. And what it was something that haunts me still. Let's dive into part 2 of my Absolution Fest 2023 series called Not Here. I've talked a lot about being overwhelmed in 2023, so I'd just like to cut to the chase. I needed to figure out who I was going to be in this new life, and the best way to do that was to see if I'd left anything behind. I needed to think, what have I always wanted to do, but I haven't done? And the first answer to that would be back to the live music spaces that I'd grown so familiar to in 2010. But then, even more so, maybe I would go back and build something that never really existed for me. And that is a life in goth spaces where I could command a presence that makes me feel comfortable and powerful in. What can I bring back that never existed? What can I bring back that was only a dream at one time? And that's when I began to see it. I was going to go back into live music spaces. I was going to be uncompromising about what I did in those spaces. I was going to go back and see if I could retrieve any part of me I left behind. And then I was going to see something else. What were the things I always wanted to do but never felt secure enough in myself to do? Because if I was feeling insecure in this moment, the perfect time was then to experiment. Let's not crystallize who I am as a person. Let's go ahead and explore. And I'm so glad that I did. I do remember looking at the lineup. Bands like Priest, Kanga, Nuevo Testamento, Empathy Test, Light Asylum. And the thing is, I didn't know who any of these bands were. And because I have a tendency to use concerts as bookmarks, a concert ticket is a bookmark in my life. But it's a bookmark for the future. You don't have to know who all the bands are before you go to a festival, do you? No, you can explore them when you're there. And the thing is, I'm perfectly happy to be someone who shows up without knowing the bands because I don't feel an urgency to be there first. If I am there first, I'm happy to launch a band into outer space. I'm happy to do that, but it doesn't have to be my experience. What I'm good at is hearing interpolation, references. These are the kinds of things that I can hear in a song. It doesn't mean that I heard it first, but it does mean that I can identify it. A lack of urgency doesn't mean a lack of desire. But still, that didn't exactly make me feel young. To quote LCD Sound System, the kids were coming up from behind. And I'm not cool like that. I am a collector of coping mechanisms, and music has been at the center of my life since I was a child. I stand with my beak open while I just keep peeping like a baby bird until somebody else shoves music down my throat. That's the way I prefer it. I knew this process was going to be self-discovery, and I knew that I was going to have to confront certain aspects of the way I handled my own illness. But summing it all up, by the time I arrived at our place in Ybor City on day one of the music festival, my life was already different from what it had been when I purchased the ticket. But by the time all three mad girls settle into our Airbnb, I was already on the clickety-clack to find the bands on YouTube. I thought, shit, we're gonna be late. So I said to the mad girls, just in a frustrated sense, we're missing the first band. Mad Girl 1 was still doing her always perfect eyeliner, while Mad Girl 2 declared erroneously that her outfit was simple, while messing with what seemed like a revolving door of accessories. While I periodically caught myself zombie watching Black Rose Burning videos, I couldn't stop thinking about the enormity of change happening mere days after the festival ended. And that's how the festival really started for me. It started by contemplating the end. The three of the mad girls, we aren't mean girls, and we aren't bad girls. We're mad girls. We're a little bit mad. It was a running joke between the three of us, but we also did have a tendency to show up everywhere together. Because I had a lot of anxiety, but because the other mad girls weren't ready, we decided that we had to sacrifice the first band in order to arrive in our best state of mind. So by the time we arrived at Crowbar in our Uber, I stepped out and there was a chicken waddling its way to Crowbar, and I just thought that was hilarious. Ha! I said, Crowbar, get it? They didn't. And if they did, they just didn't think it was funny. They're used to being stone-faced while I flail around like a 12-year-old. The abused one. That just took a turn. It's going to need to take a turn because that's where we're headed. I make a lot of jokes to entertain myself now, and I've fully accepted my identity as an imp. There are people who are surprisingly entertained by this attitude because I'm inventive as hell, and you have to like invention the same way people like ham and pineapple on pizza. But I couldn't have known that I would be triggered within an hour of stepping into Crowbar that night, that this was about to be a wild ride. This is a door to somewhere else. Not long after entering Crowbar, a beautiful woman appeared, seemingly out of nowhere, and reached over to take my face, turn my cheek, and plant a passionate kiss on my cheek before disappearing again. She whispered in my ear, "You're beautiful." It's the kind of thing I might have done when I was young, to be honest, so I knew she meant it, and also meant to arouse my curiosity. I just figured that was auspicious at that point, but as I stepped forward to wait at the bar, I settled into the buzz of the attendees and began taking note of where things were when a thought passed right through me. This is a door to somewhere else. And this is how I write. A line arrives and my mind starts recording everything around me at a higher rate than usual. It's strange because it's not trauma itself triggering hypervigilance, but live music creates a mental space to safely consider the state of the wound itself. I acknowledge what I'm feeling, and I have to acknowledge what needs to be healed to heal at all. And I was thinking about how I was leaving, how I was going somewhere else, and yet already felt like I'd left. I know, it's kind of strange. It's an odd way of existing, but this is how I exist in time. Music brings the things I can't face or have forgotten front and center. My inner narrator also visualizes what I need to feel for the dopamine to do its job. And I really was going someplace else after the festival. I was going to be going to Tennessee. But you can't know what that experience will entail either. You're forced to think about the impact of the past on your decisions. You chose to experience something different because what you have isn't serving you anymore. I knew it wasn't going to address my remaining staggering grief and the space I'd faced it. I had to leave Florida, and if I ever returned to live in Florida, I'd have to reset most things in my life. I'd already begun reclaiming myself through other means, and the aforementioned Mad Girl 2 quote-unquote simple dresser had something to do with those changes, and I'm so grateful to her for that. For many years of my life, fashion was a sense of insecurity. I wanted to feel comfortable in it. I wanted to feel confident in it. And yet, I couldn't. And I wasn't sure why. But I was beginning to get questions about what I was wearing, and it gave me just enough confidence to keep going. In Crowbar that night, Mad Girls 1 and 2 made their decisions pretty quickly about how they were going to work through this festival. Mad Girl 2 took her simple outfit to a seat toward the back, and Mad Girl 1 made a face as though she was thinking about something and said, "They're good." That's hefty praise from that source, I assure you. Surprisingly, I'm typically at a show on my own, and so I have a tendency to skulk about like Catherine Deneuve in The Hunger, as though I'm out here looking for my victims. While the second band was playing, I figured out how I was going to manage this festival myself. I started doing my spatial math scenario where I figure out where I'm going to stand for the longer term. I have to take into consideration several factors in the equation. And I play with this concept of math because I'm very calculating. And so in this sense, it was immersion divided by view plus neurological response multiplied by projected stamina equals my audience location. Think about that. Like, scratch that out on a piece of paper. It'll make sense. You can ask why I stood where I stood in any place and ask for commentary on volume, visual factors, photo, video strategies, and more stuff like that. You'll either think it's intelligent design or needless needle-nosing. Either way, you'll know it's authentic because I can't do or be anything else. But an element of my calculations I can't include at the time are how I will remember certain events in the festival and how the meanings of some things will change over time. And so all of the different meanings of things evolve and get caught up in each other over time. And missing last grasp does leave me with a point. That is, sometimes in a festival, you miss a band so that you're trading a drop in your anxiety for a band, which is what our choice was about. It was unusual for me, and I made it worth it. Though I imagine Last Grass wants to give me the middle finger for being missing in all of these processes because I did not see them. Which is why I continue to bring them up despite not seeing them. Is Last Grasp in the room with us now? I don't know. I spent most of the second band's performance trying to gauge if I'd make it the whole night and figuring out where to stand, but my brain left the building at one point. That's really what music inspires for me. I think of a sound or a lyric later because it can perpetually inform my experiences by triggering reflection and invention. In a strange sense, it felt like what people call a timeline jump. While I don't mean to say this is literally true, but it's that sense of suddenly being aware of the passage of time. Over the course of 2023 thus far, I'd learned venues. I'd developed different patterns. I'd understood what was sold where. I knew where the merch tables would probably be. I knew all of that, and that is how I have managed my anxiety for all of this time. Learn the venues, learn the parking spaces, learn it, and then you won't feel the anxiety in the future. This made Absolution Fest seem all the more doable by the time I arrived. But I already knew that I was there to process and mentally prepare for more life changes in my rather bold plan. People have always accused me of using live music to run away from my problems, but I find I can't run toward them without enough dopamine to fuel the parts of me that give a shit. When the music fills the space around me, I feel like, I don't know, let me try some poetry to try to convey it. Stick with me. Like I did one of those snazzy sleights of hand where I opened a lawn chair using one firm hand, like flip. And like I didn't have to work for this effort, though I did. This shit is expensive. Like somebody else went ahead to find the food and wow, they delivered it too. It's right there. Thank you for foraging so I could come nom on this through the delivery fee. Might be steep. Or maybe this one will be even more noticeable by Gen X. Like I'm back at Epcot in the 80s when everything felt like the embodiment of beeping and booping through these synth sounds. Bands who do working synth are keeping that spirit alive for me, really. Like my troubles are behind me and someone else is professionally driving the bus and I can just have a sit and a snickety snack. Or let's do one more. Like I traveled back in time to the 18th century to hear something live, and I feel sorry for all the people who had to learn to do all the things if they wanted to hear it at home. Also, I don't have the lice they do. My brain can do a lot in a blink, but there's a price. Anxiety and overwhelm can creep in within a second. I can go from a lyric triggering a memory to a place where the music itself begins playing on top of the memory. I'm already processing. That's the thing. These complex experiences I have inside my own mind become difficult to give a linear quality to so that they make sense to other people. It's like we have a weird fugue state going on, but we understand this for brains that are severe ADHD, and especially mine with autistic traits. Your brain does this whole thing. It does these whole crazy dances. This is why I began using my phone at shows as early as 2010. And so it's like, if you're a musician and you decide to have a drop that I wasn't expecting, I prefer to just look at you through my camera lens for a minute or look down. I get it. Let me have my phone and just tell me when it's bothering you. It's your responsibility to tell people at a show when something really is bothering you, and really, it's your opportunity to tell anyone when things are bothering, whether you're at a show or not. But also, with that phone, I've begun taking really interesting photos of bands, and some really like the sort of amateur way that I take those photos. It still maintains an audience POV experience. I take photos from interesting angles, and every time I share a dude's cut torso, somebody picks it up and throws it in a Reddit chat or something. I can be your publicity. Okay? That's what I'm saying. I love catching performers at the coolest moment. I think it's fun. If you're Jonathan Horseman and decide to leave through the ceiling, I want to catch the bottom half motion and make a joke about glass ceilings. And when I'm pushed into overwhelm, I can vacate the area right in front of the stage and lose my spot, or I can watch you through my phone intermittently for 5 minutes and be fine and still use it to share what you do. I think we need a new conversation about phones at shows. I really do. The obvious statement is that your experience of the show is partially your responsibility. If someone has their phone out, they're holding it up and blocking what you can and can't see, and you choose to just resent them quietly and say nothing, then they may not even know. And another point would be, if you're going to a concert these days and you're expecting to never show up on anyone else's phone, well, I'm not sure what to say except hit me up and I'll just make sure that you don't regret it when you see it later. But to get back to Crowbar, if you're agoraphobic like I was, you can tell yourself that others will enjoy what you're doing or that it'll spur conversations with people with which you'd otherwise never exchange ideas. You have to tell yourself, I'm agoraphobic, and so I'm going to make it to this show and I'm going to get through it in any way that I can. And sometimes looking through a lens reduces that fear. And it also creates a lot of empathy for the audience at home because maybe there was somebody there that was just like you who wants to see that show, but for reasons they can't really describe or wouldn't, they can't. And it might give you the push it does for me. Maybe your socials are your diary and you're saving it there. It's your timeline. All of it is an experiment. Think of it that way. It is an experiment in how to live your life. Music is likely one of the major keys for you, or you wouldn't be here listening to this podcast. But live music in particular is where I do therapy that isn't technically therapy, but maybe should be covered by Blue Cross Blue Shield. For the world of good it does for my mental well-being, and I wager yours, it should be covered. Should be covered. No deductible. Deduct nothing from this, good sir. Or maybe I really am just alone in the ways I cope, and the weird way I make this life something I keep choosing to live. But back to Crowbar for a moment, because Violet Silhouette was about to go on. Hey, Mad Girl 2, have you heard of these guys? I pointed to their name. Violent? Violent what? No, it's Violet. Violet Silhouette. Violet. I don't know what that means. It doesn't have to mean anything, right? Says Mad Girl 1. Mad Girl 2 exited to get a drink and sit in the back. I looked at her like she had 3 heads because it's me talking. Of course it had to mean something. I wanted another drink, but I realized I'd inched to the front and looked back like I'd come way too far to turn back now. As Violet's silhouette began setting up, I looked at the lead's face, and then I felt a sensation in my body. It was like I'd seen a face of someone I hadn't seen in decades. But I'd never seen this band play live. What is this feeling? What am I noticing? What is it? And really? That night was the only night in any photo I've ever seen the lead of Violet Silhouette look like a man I hadn't seen since I was 22 years old. The man who was 27 when I was 18. I know, it's bad. It's bad. But the good part about reminders of old traumas is that we can reflect on what has changed. And that differentiation is one of my very, very key strategies. Notice the difference between the historical moment and the current moment. I keep trying to do that, to differentiate, and it has me running right by stops that smell the same, so to speak. The person in question is sometimes called that ex, and yet I really can't think of this person as an ex, and that's why we're going to call him that guy, because he was physically, emotionally, and psychologically abusive in his fear of losing what he damn well knew he should never have tried to touch. That guy is mentioned in hushed tones. The cycles of my relationships have to end, and that's what I'm working on. So I don't think it's bad that the lead looked like that guy on that evening. But it's also important to note one freaky element of this, and that is that the lead of Violet Silhouette looks nothing on any of the photos you will ever see of him the way that he looked that night, which was to say, so specifically like that guy. There is no connection between the lead for Violet Silhouette and that guy in question. It's important that you know that. The only reason it's important to mention is because that was the trigger. When you feel as though you are suddenly in the presence of someone you have long forgotten, and that person made you feel scared all the time, that is when you know the trigger matters. The trigger matters. And so I snapped a photo of the lead while they were setting up. And I sent the photo to my best friend to tell her about it. And she said, yeah, it's weird. But also the way the lead was dressed that night was exactly the way that guy dressed during the time of all of this in the 90s. And I cannot stress this enough, how odd it was and how it felt like some sort of shimmering presence of an apparition from another timeline just arriving on stage for just 1 hour set. Especially since, again, he's never looked like this before. And the thing is that I would see another apparition of that guy when I made it to Nashville and went to a Royal and the Serpent show, clearly indicating that that wound never quite healed. But at this point in Crowbar, Violet Silhouette had not even begun playing. They were still setting up, and I was already standing transfixed at the stage as though something was inhabiting my spine, a ghost that isn't mine. I had to think about this while they were testing things, and it hit me. So I sent my best friend a text message. I think he kind of looks like Ted Bundy. She responded, interesting association. And that's when, bam, it's 2002. I'm 26 years old, and I'm walking down a hall in a building at Florida State University where I am a graduate teaching assistant. It's only a certain number of years, 4, since that guy, but I'm walking seemingly like it's any other day. I did know that that guy lived in the same town as I did at that time. I just thought I could ignore him. As I'm walking down the hall, there is a bulletin board with pieces of paper pinned to it. As I step up to read, they are 2 different images of a man who has attacked girls on the campus. They are 2 different images of 2 different men until it hits me. If I converge the 2 photos, it would look exactly like that guy. I hit the floor. I woke up a short bit later, not sure what had happened. And here's the thing that really kicks me in the gut. Sometimes you discount what's right in front of your face and make decisions that could be harmful to other people. And I think I did. I began to realize. With a growing concern standing in the middle of Crowbar, I began to understand something I haven't wanted to talk about before, even in the written versions on the Substack. It's entirely possible that those 2 guys were one guy, and that the one guy was that guy. But there's no way of knowing. And it's just that at the time I discounted that reality entirely, because what I can say without question is that guy is the kind of guy to do that. He did it to me. Standing in Crowbar, I began to realize, I'm not going to get this out of my head tonight, am I? And then I noticed a feeling I had only felt twice since 2022. Tingling hands, numb fingertips, now a flutter in my chest, now a numb cheek, now needles on my lips. Oh, it was a panic attack mounting, and I had to begin using every Jedi mind trick against myself to avoid falling right there at the venue, while I also play it very, very cool so as to not let on. to people standing around me that this chick is about to fall over. As I started to breathe right, I realized something. This music festival is going to be a wild ride. And as the pressure raised in my chest, not here, please God, not here. This would not be a floor that I'd want to taste.